Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince. In the middle is Ian. And on the right is our special guest, Ian McCallum. And I apologize. I thought I would try to do a new scene. But unfortunately, as soon as I started, the golf carts zoomed down the hill and they can hear us. But Ian McCallum, thank you so much for taking your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And
I typically am.
Yeah, you might be our most loyal attendee. That's why the numbers are down on the attendee list, because when we lose one, it's a big deal.
That's right. No, but thank you so much for coming on, and I will mute my mic in case my dog decides to bark at the golfers that are on the course behind me. But we know that you're a member of United Soccer Coaches Education staff. You've been for a long time. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey, and then what we'll do is we'll talk about, your life on the island, where you're at.
Sure. So I actually grew up on an island on the west coast of Scotland, a small island of about 6,000 people. Didn't really know what to do after school, but loved playing and loved coaching, so got into that. And ultimately, when I did my Scottish FAC license, I decided this was the journey I wanted. Went to university in Glasgow and in Dundee, got a degree in sports coaching, and then made it across the pond, worked in New Jersey, Indiana, Minnesota, and then about 11 years ago, we made the journey out to Seattle area, ultimately another island, Bainbridge Island, which is about a 35-minute ferry ride across from Seattle.
So I guess I didn't realize you were in Indiana. What part of Indiana were you in?
I coached at Hanover College.
Yeah. Okay. I do know the Hanover. Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
So this morning we had a guest on from Portugal, Benfica. We have a gentleman called Bruno from Mexico, Ethan Tate from Seattle, Jim Watts from Hanover College, and Lawrence from Boston. So we're getting a small but enthusiastic audience. So Ian, I think the first time you and I ever met was at Butler University.
Yep.
And you were taking an NSCA course, and I was taking the Master Coach Diploma. And you were inquiring what the hell I was doing, and I didn't know because Jeff Tipping was making the course up as we went along. And I think you were concluding your premiere, so that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
And then you and I had the opportunity to work together in Minnesota for quite some time. Now, Bainbridge Island it has a bridge to the north, right, that connects it to parts. But a lot of your competition is in Seattle. So is it true that your kids are getting on ferries to go and play away games quite a lot of the time?
Yeah, so an away game for our competitive kids, it's a 35-minute ferry ride, and thankfully the majority of our competition is in the greater Seattle area. So you jump on a ferry ride, and then when you get over there, 25 or 30-minute drive is typically your journey. The one thing about that is on a beautiful sunny day, you've got Mount Rainier and the Seattle skyline to enjoy, and maybe an after-game refreshment on the way back.
Do the teams from Seattle, is it completely reciprocal quid pro quo? So they play, it is home and away, and they'll come over?
It is, yeah. And, ultimately for those families, it's a bit of a day trip for them. And I think downtown Winslow on Bainbridge, it's a great hotspot. Seattle ferries to Bainbridge, about 2 million passengers a year. Although right now, I have no idea what it is.
Mm-hmm. Right. And do because I coached in Minnesota, or you did too. So when the kids would come down from Duluth, or they'd come in from the Dakota side of the state, they were often the sort of country bumpkins. What is the perception of Bainbridge Island? Are you a bit unique when you come to competition?
No, I think, when I was coaching for the high school here, and the Seattle schools would come over, they felt as if they were coming into the wilderness. It was, wow, where are we now? But it's, the island's a beautiful area. A lot of people commute and work in Seattle, or have been, for Amazon, Microsoft, lawyers, doctors. It's pretty diverse, the workforce, but, it's a beautiful place.
Your the last time I was there, which was unfortunately not recently enough, you had two beautiful turf fields, one giant turf slab, but there were two fields and it was turf everywhere. At the time, you didn't have lights.
And we
you
still
get
don't.
lights on it. Okay. So do you want to share a little bit why you don't have lights?
We don't have lights because there's a big observatory right there, and I think it's one of the only public observatories in the whole of the US. And the disagreement or discussion about putting lights up happened before I got here, but that was the big component of not being able to put lights up there because it would affect stargazing.
Yeah.
We did try to reach out to them recently, but you know, we were willing to schedule and our stuff around, but it didn't work out.
It's amazing to me in your climate that you've got the right surface in a great location with great parking and facilities around it, and yet the ability to maximize the usage of it is really quite minimal because the residents in the neighborhood don't want the lights on, right?
Well, we do have the high school lit field. The challenge with that is everybody wants it when it's, you know, that time of year. Vince and I were talking a little bit earlier on about, you know, the virus and how it's going to impact our life. Right now, I'm looking at our fall scheduling and how much field time we're going to have to schedule, because typically for our 4v4 games, we'll have 8 small fields on the one big high school field. Now, in this fall, are we only going to be allowed to have 4 fields or 6 fields? And how's that going to impact our field rental, our ability to get more game time or more field time, and then just as a bigger cost?
You've been there 11 years, and so obviously you've developed a lot of things in your own to your liking. But I know when you got there originally, it was a very different kind of program. I remember distinctly when I joined you, you were playing, I don't know, whatever it was, 9-a-side with 6-year-olds. And I was really pissed off with you because you'd come from Minnesota and we would never have done that. And I basically sort of said, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And you said, "It's the only league format. It's the only program we can put them in."
Yeah.
And my takeaway from that is something I talk about today with young coaches is sometimes you have to compromise what you believe in order to put food on the table and to actually run the program. And you have to work to get to the position where you can affect change, right?
Yeah. And you know, my time in Minnesota was great time and learned so much of those small set of games. And thankfully, you know, the state association here and the different leagues here have, hey, Tess, have changed the mindset, and we were able to get all those small set of games. You know, we have a small set of summer camp where it's just 4v4 games, 1-day camp, tournament format, and the kids and families love it. But going into any club, you just got to review what you've got, and then changes that you make. I find that if you try to make changes too quickly, it gets pushed back at you, where it's a period of time where you can make those changes, make that impact happen.
Yeah. At the time, I think your state, there was competition between rival national associations, right?
There still is.
Yeah, still the same challenges.
Yeah, but it's about probably 50-50 or 60-40 are under US Youth and US Club. We as a club, we're in Washington Youth Soccer. Our league is the NPSL, which is a fantastic league. Bunch of volunteers put the league together, but it's sanctioned under Washington Youth Soccer.
Tomorrow we have, amongst other people, Kevin Payne, Chris Lavis, Skip Gilbert, and a few other guests on, because one of the thoughts would be that during this time, there's an opportunity to at least find out what the other people are doing. And if it's going to be a disagreement, at least agree on what you disagree on.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm hoping that you know we lost the DA last week and other things are being cancelled, but there may be the opportunity for consolidation and a little bit of Dayton, at least for a short period of time. How active are the Seattle Reign and the Seattle Sounders in your community with youth teams?
You know, it's both clubs are fantastic. We have an assistant coach from the Reign who lives on the island. He just moved here. Sam Rady, fantastic guy. Grant Clark, who's the player administrator for the Sounders, lives on the island. And then I'm well connected with their equipment manager, Garrett Malling, who played for the high school here. We were able to get, we're doing a little round the world challenge where our kids in the club post into our technical director, Phil Avison, and how many juggles they get in a day. So over the last 2 days, we've traveled based on those juggles from Bainbridge Island to Cairo, and then yesterday to Sydney. And today's the day we have to make it back to Bainbridge Island. And the cool part about this is that our board and our board members are willing to do some fundraising for this. So we're looking to raise about $1,700 for the Bainbridge Youth Services, which supports our youth again. So that's one of the fun things that we're doing right now.
And how do you calculate the distance by a juggle?
One juggle is 1 cent.
Ah, very good. Very good. Yeah, there's some interesting philanthropic ideas out there. I heard the other day that Jurgen Klopp, he just gave money. He gave £20,000 to the Tesco's in Formby in Liverpool. This is the story, and he told them that every time an NHS worker goes in, they get £50 off their shopping.
Wow!
So there's all kinds of charity going on out there.
Yeah.
I've got one more question, and I'm sure Vince has got a couple. And we really want to thank you for being such an enthusiastic watcher. You must be, because this is the 45th one of these that we've done. And we have actually posted the recordings of almost all of them, except for one where I biffed on and didn't turn it on, and a couple which had Ian Mulliner on, which will never see the light of day. So you've got 3 boys at home. Obviously, your wife, who I know very well, but the 3 boys, and teenage boys, growing boys, from a parent's point of view, just purely the parent and the DOC and the coach. But starting at the parent point, what have been your challenges?
Well, the first thing is that I'm no longer the tallest person in my house since coronavirus started. But you know, with a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 14-year-old, their schoolwork comes in at different times of the day. That 14-year-old is looking for a lot more sleep and looking to try and stay up later. Fortnite and gaming is a big thing, as you can see by this in our house. I don't do it at all, but it was one of the things that Sue Ryan said in one of the webinars a couple of days ago, asking your players how they learn, how they best learn. And just looking at my kids, they all learn in different ways. So how they're doing their schoolwork at home is very different. Two of the boys can get through it really quickly, and the other one, the youngest one, takes a little bit longer to get through his stuff. So being that parent and allowing them the time can be really hard. We're not perfect at it. I'm sure like no parent is perfect. But then on the flip side, from a soccer perspective, what do we want our kids to be doing? Well, we force them to go for a walk with us. We ask them to do some stuff. Does it always happen? No. I don't think we can force them to do things really, just with the situation. The oldest one is really missing his friends. That social piece for him has been really tough.
Are they? Is he using Zoom and FaceTime and things like that at least?
I think he just texts. His text. There's no
TikTok, Snapchat.
Yeah, TikTok, Snapchat. That's the ones. The 2 youngest ones don't have cell phones. Yeah, but it's just engaging with his friends, and then every friend is available at different times. It's not within a certain time period. Even as a club DOC, our board members are engaging at different times because of their family schedules, of their work schedules. So everything seems at times to be just spread out 24/7. as a club director, there's been times where I'm like, you know what? I'm turning my computer off. I'm not doing this right now. After this call, I'm going to grab the boys and we're going to watch a movie.
Yeah, interestingly, you say that, and I hadn't thought about it quite that way. I definitely felt, Vince and I both think we feel busier now almost than we were before. But my CEO, quite reasonably and with no malintent, sent me an email at 8:30 last night looking for information before 8 a.m. this morning because she had a board meeting at 8 a.m., a virtual board meeting. And I was kind of anxious, and fortunately I saw her email. But in hindsight, she did send it way after the close of business and wanted the work. And she wasn't being unreasonable. She's on that cycle too, where all of a sudden you find yourself at 5 a.m. sending an email to somebody and then being pissed off they didn't respond. And you realize, wait a minute, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. So, or in your case, if I was writing to you, it'd be 3 in the morning, which would be even worse. So yeah, I get that for sure. Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Number one, the YouTube link, is that like the example of how you do the juggling, or?
No, well, it is a little bit of an example. One of my team parents, I coach an 05 girls team, and I'll actually be coaching my son's 05 boys team this coming season. Okay. So that'll be a different challenge in itself. Yes. But I have a great relationship with my 05 girls players, and one of them, her dad's a principal, and I asked her to film her dad juggling, and Jeff Hale's a fantastic guy, funny guy. I've probably watched this video 10 times last night. It's hilarious. It's super.
All right, good. No, I'll have to check that one out. I'll have to click on the link so I have it. And then you've been there 11 years, right? So, and I know a lot of DOCs, I mean, the shelf life for a lot of directors of coaching isn't that long. So what's been like your success? Why have you been so successful? Why have you stayed so long? Because like, for me, a DOC, it could be really good, but you might be moving on in 3 or 4 years.
Sure. And I think, I jumped from my oldest son was born in New Jersey. My middle son was born in Minnesota, and our youngest one was born here. And we're not planning to move anywhere else. But the board here and the community here are absolutely fantastic. I will share, I did have a bit of a health scare about 5 years ago, and the club and the community were so supportive. I had basically had to take the summer off work, and they brought one of our part-timers in to help with the work. But we have a big soccer community on the island. Soccer's important. The youth and the education on the island are very supportive and a big factor on the island. So it's a great place to live. Everything that I've experienced over the last 10, 11 years, why would I want to go anywhere else?
Right. Yeah. And, obviously you've like every other DOC with a club, right? You have your peaks and valleys, right? With challenges and successes. And you mentioned something to me a few minutes ago about how after this you are shutting down watching a movie, right? And I think for me, as a DOC and a former high school coach, college coach, state DOC, you got to put the ball away sometimes.
Yeah.
And you just got to relax and enjoy life.
One of the things that kind of dawned on me a couple of days ago is that this break from soccer is probably the longest break my kids have had from the game. And when I say that, I mean, my youngest doesn't like soccer probably because he's been dragged to every soccer field in Washington State.
That includes going to Europe, right? So even when you go home to see family, that isn't the length of break from the game.
Yeah.
You don't get a month off, 6 weeks off, it's 6 weeks in the case of Washington, right?
Well, in Washington, soccer's 24/7 because the seasons are broken up. I feel bad for the high school boys right now. Their high school season just got shut down, but high school girls are in the fall. Club goes through. Our club season starts in May, June for some clubs and goes all the way to February, April. So really, there's soccer 24/7 in Washington State if you want it. And as a club DOC, you're always engaged in that. So My kids either come to watch a practice, come into a game, involved in their own practices, or going to a rain event, a Sounders event, whatever, college game, whatever it may be. For the last 10, 11 years, they've always been around that. So I think it's actually been good for them. But where it goes next, I don't know.
Did you listen to here's a kind of a leading question, the webinar with Ben Freakley, right? You listened to pretty much all 44 of them. Do you remember the one with Ben?
Basketball coach? Was that basketball coach?
No, Ben was the Toronto Blue Jays psychologist.
I got some of that actually. Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So what he had talked about was people, including your athletes, looking this as a challenge as opposed to a threat. The opportunity this provides as opposed to the disappointment and misery and uncertainty. And I think, I think I've been working hard, but I do feel a bit recharged from the grind of the office, traveling every weekend, because I traveled of the 90 days of December, January, and February, I traveled 54 of them. And now I haven't traveled for 6 weeks. And that's been healthy for a number of reasons. So I think there are silver linings in here for sure.
Oh, 2 weeks ago, I'm ready to go again. I want to see my players. I want to see the kids on the field again. When that's going to be, realistically, I think in Washington, we're not going to get on the field till July. There's folk talking about June, but school fields and facilities are shut down until I think June 20th. So that would be the earliest possible date.
We have a question from Lawrence. He's basically asking, are there, some unique challenges that you find coaching on the island, or on an island, I should say?
Other than the ferry ride, which is so enjoyable, it's just like, I don't know where Lawrence is from, but it's just like a community outside, a small community outside a big city. We're just happen to be taking a ferry across to a game rather than driving for 60 minutes. The biggest challenges, Ian mentioned earlier on, just their ability to have lit fields. And so in the wintertime, soccer, ultimate frisbee, lacrosse, girls lacrosse, everyone wants that facility. That's the biggest challenge we have right now.
Yeah, sure. Now, one last question, I promise, and then because we've gone over time and you've been so gracious. You mentioned coaching your own kid, your own child. Is this your first time doing it?
No, I actually coached him when he was younger.
So my follow-up question is, what tips do you have about that experience? Because
have you worked that out yet?
Well,
I did. So my son started talking back, and then he had a new coach. And so about 11, he had a new coach.
So I was probably the same age with Finn when he was younger, and I had a guest session when he had a new coach. I had to come in because the coach was sick or whatever. Yeah. And twice within 75 minutes, I had him crying. And it was just because, I ask a lot of questions from my players, and he knew the answers. But of course, I didn't pick him because I didn't want to favor him. I picked someone else twice. And he knew the answers, and he really wanted to, show off. So, but now that he's 14, it's going to be when we made this decision as a club that I was going to take over the team. We didn't let him know until afterwards, and then we talked about it, and we're going to talk about it again. Yeah. I think the biggest piece when you're coaching your own kid is just that open line of communication, talking about it, going through the process. But ultimately, when you've got a teenager, everything's out the window. Who knows?
Oh, Ian, I got a great question here. Jim, Vince, forgive me for wanting to ask this one. Jim Watts asked a question. So basically, if Vince and I were doing a tryout on Bainbridge Island, and 14-year-old Finn McCallum was going up against 14-year-old Ian McCallum, which would be the player we selected for the team, and why?
Well, I'll tell you right now, we're doing this juggling challenge, and I'm knocking it out the park and compared to those guys. But he has great field awareness. He really does. He has good first touch. He sees the field really, really well. And He's probably not going to have this great speed because neither his mum or dad have any speed. But his field awareness is outstanding. I would take him in a heartbeat before myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Augsburg potential?
Augsburg potential. Jim's the women's coach at Hanover. Maybe he can go and live with Jim and keep my my costs down. But I don't know. My wife and I talk about the next journey for Finn. He'll be a 9th grader in the fall, and what college will look like. My family are all back in Scotland. Does university or college in Scotland, is that an option? We really don't know.
I got to spend some time at Heriot Watt at
Great
the Orium. A fantastic place. Yeah, it made me very nostalgic for my days going to university in Great Britain for sure. Ian, thank you very much for your time. It's a pleasure. It's a shame that we have this situation going on to reconnect to the depth that we all have. But when this is over, be it convention in Anaheim or the next time on a field, we'll certainly celebrate. Vince, to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry, I had to wait for the tractor to go by. I think they were like moving sand or something like that. Thank you so much for taking time to be on, and I hope that you continue to be one of our loyal viewers. But tomorrow, just for everyone knows, we have a young man by the name of Sean Addison, who is he's in our 30 under 30 program. He also runs Top Soccer here in Indiana. And then in the afternoon, we have another high school coach, the spousal unit, or the better half of Rusty Oglesby, and that'll be Corey Oglesby. So we have another high school coach coming on tomorrow afternoon. So thank you all so much. Ian, thank you again.
Thanks, Vin. Thanks, Ian.
And we'll see. Well, we'll hopefully see people tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good job, young man.
Thank you.